Welcome everybody. It is Thursday, the 23rd of September 2021 and 8 o'clock here in Britain, British summertime. This is a TILT webinar with Stephanie Jackson. And please would you tell me how to pronounce your name, Stephanie?
Stephanie Jackson-Basuyaux, or just Jackson's fine too.
Basuyaux, thank you very much. And the title is Technology and Teachers, an evidence-based approach to computer-assisted language learning. I'm Helen Myers. I'm chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning. We're very happy to host these webinars. The person who does all the work on scouting for all of this wonderful talent is Joe Dale. So I'll just pass over to Joe Dale to talk about himself for the moment before later on he talks about our guest.
Thank you ever so much, Helen. So I'm really delighted that we're doing the first TILT webinar of the new academic year. It's something to really look forward to, I think. And we're in for a real treat tonight, which is wonderful. So I'm an independent languages consultant, and I have to make a living somehow. So I do living through webinars, as well as other things, such as podcast editing and so on and so forth, and a little bit of authoring as well. But in the chat, I've put in a Google Doc with some example sessions for remote teaching, hybrid teaching, or face-to-face teaching with technology. I would love to do a webinar for your department or your district or multiple academy trust, or I can do cross-curricular sessions as well. Have a look at the document. If there's anything that jumps at you, I can design a bespoke course for you, literally anywhere in the world. And I'm currently, or since the pandemic, I've been doing webinars with organizations in Australia, in the States, all over Europe, Lithuania, Russia, here, there, and everywhere. So I'd love to hear from you, and do get in touch if you're interested. And let's get back to the important thing, which is tonight's session.
Okay, I'll just mention about the Association for Language Learning. Obviously, we feel it's really important for people to be a member of an association. We know there are membership organisations in other countries as well. If you'd like to use the chat now to encourage people to join your association, or if you're in ALL, please do add your name now. Great to belong. You'll get magazines and friendship and representation as well. We've got some webinars which are coming up soon, and those are just here. If you go onto the ALL London branch here, and we'll put this into the chat so that you've got the link there, and you can see that Joe's been really good and has already lined up. We've got three more TILT webinars already lined up for the next Thursdays, and we've got some other things coming up as well. So you're very, very welcome to come to any of those, and you can sign up through there. And that's the wrong presentation. So there we are, sorry. Yes, we'll be getting in touch with you after the webinar to give you links to this recording, which Joe very kindly hosts on his YouTube channel, and I put together a page, so there'll be a page dedicated to this webinar on the ALL London website. So over to Joe now then to introduce Stephanie.
Fantastic. Thank you ever so much, Helen. So during the pandemic, I've been going along to lots of different webinars to do with language teaching, not only from people from the UK, but also from around the world. And it was an absolute pleasure to take part in the, I think it was 5-session course, if I remember correctly, that Stephanie ran for her base in Edmonton, Alberta, not just for Canadian language teachers, but anybody that wanted to come along. Admittedly, for the UK, they were starting at 11 o'clock in the evening. So I think I missed a couple of them simply because I fell asleep on the sofa. But the ones I went to were absolutely fabulous. So I thought it would be wonderful to ask Stephanie to come along and to talk to us about an evidence-based approach to computer-assisted language learning, as I think there's a real interest at the moment, certainly for UK language teachers, around research-based approaches and evidence-based approaches. So thank you ever so much, Stephanie, for offering to do this. If you'd like to share your screen now, and then we can crack on. And as per normal, I'll be collecting the questions. So if you have any questions at all, anybody watching live, feel free to put them in the chat. It's helpful if you put a Q in front of your question so that I can see exactly what is a question and what is not a question. And then when we have a natural pause in the session, Stephanie will then ask if we've got any questions, and I can then put those questions to Stephanie, and we'll go like that, if that's okay with everyone. So thank you ever so much, Stephanie. Over to you. You have the floor.
No problem. Well, thank you very much. I'm just going to put here quick hot link to the presentation, because I'm not going to do a how to use a specific technology. So this isn't going to be like a tutorial. I want to take sort of a bigger picture look, and as we said, sort of this based in research. However, like, I'm not a researcher, I am a teacher. And so really looking at how can we apply this in the classroom. And so I hope that I can give you some practical strategies and maybe even some technologies to try. Please don't think that you're gonna like that you have to take every technology and every idea and implement it next week, right? So we'll go nice and slow here. So just looking at reflecting on some strategies for authentic engagement in the target language, whichever language you may teach in your classroom, through computer-assisted language learning, which we'll affectionately call CALL throughout the session, just to save some space on some slides. So this is our little outline today, some quick introductions, and we're going to look at two Canadian publications, actually both by the same researcher. And one of them is on computer-assisted language learning. And so the sections sort of 4 to 8 are sections in the literature review, so in the research itself, just sort of having that frame everything. So yes, I'm a former French second language teacher at the junior high level, so the little preteens. And now I work at Edmonton Public Schools still, but I work as a French program coordinator for the Institute for Innovation and Second Language Education. And we're really, really fortunate to have this department in our public school division that supports pedagogy and leadership training for second language teachers. And then I also volunteer for our Alberta Teachers Association, our teachers union, on the second language and Intercultural Council, which is where I started doing these sort of ed tech presentations. You've got my email there if you'd like to, shoot me an email if you have any questions, or you've got an idea, something sparked in this presentation and you just want to work it out a bit, or throw some stuff on the wall and see what sticks, then don't hesitate to email me. So we're going to do a quick waterfall here. So get your answer ready, but don't enter it into the chat. So you can type it, but just don't press enter. And tell me how you really feel about a computer-assisted language learning. If you have the emoji available, then you can put that in. And if not, we've got some numbers there. So you can just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we'll do a little waterfall, which is a nice way to give students in your class, and if you're online with them, a chance to think about their answer without being sort of influenced by the other answers. And so everyone go ahead and press enter now. Some 5s and 3s, 5 4s. I'm thinking if you're joining some 2s, but a 2 from a person who's joining a webinar in the evening to learn about technology. So that's kind of amazing, I think. Thank you. So you got a little bit all over the place. That's great. So the research, we're going to look at 2 Canadian publications, and both of these are by a researcher out of the University of Calgary. Her name is Dr. Mary Grantham O'Brien, and just a few seconds to fangirl here with Dr. Mary Grantham O'Brien, because she works really hard when we've had her do research for us. She works really hard with her students to make the research applicable to the classroom and to really kind of bridge that gap between academia and classroom practice. And before working with Dr. Mary Grantham O'Brien and engaging with her research, I always found research really difficult to understand and like actually understand the words and then how do I implement this in my classroom? What does that actually look like in front of students? And so I'm hoping that we can, use this research to frame some practical strategies for you tonight. And the first one is commissioned by the Canadian Association of Second Language Teachers, and it's facilitating language learning through technology. So there's the full literature review, but I highly suggest, or like my little hack is to get the executive summary. And so you kind of get all of the big headlines from the research in really easy to digest points. And a little kind of bonus tip here, if you're ever, interested in joining Consult or looking at some of their research or some of their other resources, they've got some amazing resources out there. One link there that I've put there is this new teacher handbook, which is just a guide with some very practical strategies. If you are teaching, it says French as a second language, but honestly, if you're teaching any second language anywhere. And so some of the challenges that teachers have had with classroom space, or maybe not speaking the language proficiently, and how can I, what are some practical strategies for dealing with that? And so there's the full resource there, and it's for free online. So just put the link there. And then the second research or second piece of literature that we'll be looking at is from where I work, so the Institute for Innovation in Second Language Education, or IISLE. And you can click there for a free download. And another bonus, we have a bunch of free resources for language teachers here online. These are teacher support packs, which we had lessons for French immersion, showed students who are learning core subjects in other languages. But if you scroll down, you've got some other literature reviews on quality language programming, some FSL en action, so some really, how to, implement routines in your classroom and things like that. So there's just some little bonus resources for you there. Always like the freebies, right? Let's just get right into things. So why use technology? Why are we using computer-assisted language learning at all in our classrooms? So we're going to do one more waterfall. So looking at this, little GIF of Bart in his classroom, and does this spark any idea for you about technology in your classroom? Does this bring up any feelings? Any kind of ideas that you have coming to your mind? I would love to see you pop them in the chat there. And instead of a waterfall, we're going to do a trickle. So if you're influenced by others, that's fine. As soon as you have your idea ready, you can press enter. And I'm just going to read the comment here about the waterfall. Yeah, it's less fuss than a Mentimeter, but not as anonymous for sure. For me personally, when I'm looking at this GIF, it really hits home the, isn't this how technology often is in our classroom? Like one day you show up and all of a sudden there's like a new technology in your classroom and nobody asked you if you wanted to have it there. It's just there. This poor teacher isn't even in the classroom when they come and install this new board in her classroom. She's just going to show up and there you go, right? And we can see that the technology is a little more engaging, right? And obviously faster, right? So we've got that sort of, how do you say, we've got that functional change here, right? And so I'm not sure about you, but this image of a longtime classroom does not look anything like any classroom that I was in. Here in Canada, we have very diverse classrooms. So we have a lot of English language learners, a lot of students with different learning needs, and people working at different levels. In my own school division, we have a language requirement, which means that students learn a second language from grades 4 to 9. And that means that sometimes when students are moving into our city or into our country in the middle of junior high, it might be their first French or first Spanish class ever. And so you've kind of got that kindergarten to university level in the same classroom and everything in between. And then that idea of having that sort of one piece of technology that everybody is just glued to, and that everybody's so engaged in watching this one piece of technology is not going to be super applicable to today, right? This is about technology there to receive information. Yeah, I experienced this as well, Helen, as a pupil. I can remember them being so excited when they would wheel in that TV, right? And it seems like today, maybe we've taken it a little too far. Maybe there's a little too much technology. We think of kids and technology. We think like they're addicted to their devices, maybe up to no good. But like, we don't know, maybe this dude is like, he's on his Google Classroom looking for his math homework, and she's here looking up how to use the word reference app to, find a new word in Spanish. And this guy in the back in the orange t-shirt, he's looking up how to knit videos on YouTube. So we just don't know. I mean, sometimes they're using technology for good, right? And like, why technology? Because 2020, right? Last year kind of threw us all for a loop, I think. I think if anything, technology has proved just how important it is that to be successful, nowadays we need to use technology, and especially as a teacher. So I remember telling students like 3-4 years ago, like, YouTuber isn't a real job, and then here I am right now, YouTubing as my real job, right? And if anything, being able to harness the power of technology can not only make this transition to online learning a little smoother, but hopefully make it, rich and deep learning for the students. So diving right into the research here. So when I look at this, what really jumps out to me is this authentic input, that authentic and enhanced input. And so really looking at how technology, how can we leverage that to get the kind of language input for students, the videos and the reading and all of those things that is really authentic. Like, what are people who are using that language in those cultures actually reading and listening to and watching and things like that. And it also helps with this individualized instruction, right? Helping them work on their own. And at the same time, we have the flip side of that coin where they can also engage in more collaboration, right? And really appeal to a range of learning styles. So it's pretty clear that, bringing technology into the classroom is really going to be beneficial for our students. And I really love this, this kind of dichotomy or this double-sided coin of it leading to more learner autonomy. I mean, when you think of especially mobile devices and having that learning like right in your hand, but then again, encouraging more collaboration amongst language learners, which is also going to help them learn more, right? And this idea about self-regulating your language learning, and so that metacognitive piece as well, is really important to bring into your language classes, and technology can help you with that, right? So getting students thinking about their learning. So sometimes we see, again, the students with their technology and thinking like, they're never talking to us, I can't get 2 words out of him. It's just ridiculous. I even wonder if he can communicate anymore, not realizing that all of this communication is happening in the background, right? So what are they using technology for nowadays? Students are using technology to connect with other people, and to really like connect with people in different places with different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, who might share some of the same interests. And you're communicating with them and collaborating with the people, and this technology can really bring the world closer together. And so we might just see them, the cartoonist may have thought he didn't realize that they're actually doing all of these things when they're on their devices, right? They're showing you something, they're telling you a joke, they're sharing ideas, they're creating content, they're writing, right? They're reading, they're listening, and they're speaking online. What are they doing? They're doing all of the things that I want them to do in my language classroom, right? They're making instant connections. They're talking about themselves and sharing things. And so that's what I want to leverage in my classroom. And that's what I would, those are the kinds of things that I really want to be able to have my students be able to do. I want them to communicate authentically in the second language, in the additional language classroom. And so from the IISLE Lit review on the characteristics of successful language programming that we looked at the beginning, looking at how incorporating student interest is really going to motivate your students more, right? And when they're motivated more, of course, they're going to learn better, right? And so bringing those interests into the instructional materials and into your classroom materials is not only going to make it more engaging, but it's also going to help them learn, right? You're going to offer more authentic learning opportunities, and that's going to encourage those deeper connections with the target cultures, with the target language, and really bringing in that dynamic learning environment, right? So that's the why. So if I haven't convinced you enough, I mean, I don't know that you need much convincing. You're here in your evening on your time off for a technology webinar. So we'll stop for a minute before we go into some considerations. Are there any questions?
We don't have any, we don't have any questions at the moment, but I've been tweeting a couple of the screenshots that you've been sharing, and I think it's really fascinating the way in which you are, you're talking about the benefits of call, and the way in which we're sort of relating very much to what you're saying. It would be lovely to have some more questions in the chat. I'm sure there are thoughts and ideas that people are coming up with watching Stephanie's fantastic presentation. But for the minute, if we carry on, if that's okay, and then
yeah, that's great.
I'll put some more questions to you in a moment, if that's all right.
That's awesome. So just a few considerations before we dive into some of the, here's some technologies that might help you with language production and things like that. So I always start with a little talk, and it's been talked it's been called the Technology and Teachers Talk. So just a little bit before you delve into all the technologies, remember that user-friendly is good, complicated is bad. So very simply, technology is there to serve you. If it isn't intuitive and user-friendly, then drop it like a bad habit. Wait until Google buys them and makes it easier, or until, if it's really that great of a product or that great of a service, then they will either make it easier to use, or somebody will come up with something that does the same thing that's a lot easier to use. So just, really, really focus on those simple, easy to use technologies. Start clicking around. And if you can't see light at the end of the tunnel at after an hour, oh, I can see how I could use this in my classroom, drop it. Come back 3 months later and just try something else, because the technology, it needs to be able to support the language learning, right? First and foremost, how are we building language proficiency? And so if you're spending all of your time trying to figure out the technology, how much time are the students going to be spending trying to figure out the technology? And that's kind of done in their first language or in English. And so, you're kind of losing that language learning time. So really, get the best bang for your buck. Whenever you can, do the technology teaching, this is how you use this app in the target language. It takes longer, but that's curricular learning, right? And it's super authentic. How do I use this thing? And following instructions is super authentic. So doing that in the target language is a great way to make sure that you're building language proficiency when you're bringing in the technology. So always thinking about, cool isn't enough. You need to use technology because the pedagogy is sound, the linguistic characteristics are, solid, the material's authentic, there's opportunities for production, the learners are receiving some feedback. You need to, it's not just good, or it's not good enough if it's just a cool technology, right? It has to advance the language learning somehow. And then one more thing to keep in the back of your mind, but we could do a whole hour on the SAMR model, is this, are you using technology as a direct substitute, or just sort of, a functional improvement? Or can we really get to where that technology is allowing for redesign and for tasks that are redefining the task, something that you couldn't do without technology, right? Because that's what students are going to be using technology for in the future in their jobs in order to be successful. And so whenever possible, we're trying to think about how can we get them up to that modification and redefinition levels. So just some examples if you're not too familiar with the SAMR model. So your substitution, students print a quiz at home and they fill it out. You're using the technology to print it, but there's no real difference, right? However, if you flip that quiz into a Google form, it's a little bit, they can save their progress. You can have it automatically marked. It's a little bit easier than, you know, you're getting a little bit of augmented support there, right? When we go above the line, so to the modification. So what if you had students write an essay and then use like Mote to do an audio recording with some kind of soundtrack that they're going to share this with an authentic audience, right? And then maybe you're doing like the redefinition phase is like a class collaborative documentary. So if you have this topic or concept that you're teaching, everyone kind of takes a little piece of it and does a 60-second, you know, screen share sort of, you know, in-depth dive into one part of it, and you stitch those together and you've got a little documentary on the topic. Yeah, Mote is a pretty cool one, right? And then some other examples here. So using the online version of a text where you can kind of, you know, you can make the text bigger and things like that. So it's a little bit more help. If you're using Read and Write for Google, they can highlight and annotate. There's a glossary, a visual dictionary. So all of these kind of added bonuses when you go online. But can we take that even further and get them to use the Read and Write for Google speak recognition so that they can share reflections on the text that they're reading and then have a virtual debate on Zoom or on Google Meet, right? You know, can we bring in social media somehow and things like that? And so there's really, you know, so much more that you can do with it. But you don't always have to go above the line. Like a Google form for a quiz is sometimes just awesome, right? Sometimes you just need it to be a little bit faster, and giving that immediate feedback to the students that Google Forms can, and that's totally fine. So it doesn't always have to be over the line, and it doesn't always have to be technology, right? Good old pen and paper is great as well. Getting up and getting students in an inside-outside circle is great pedagogy. So. And then again, really focusing on that user-friendly technology. Don't get overwhelmed. We're going to get now into more of the, here's some technologies that you can use for this or this. And I just don't want you to feel like this is a laundry list of all the technologies you should already be using in your classroom. This is more of like some inspiration moving forward. And so really start with one at a time and user-friendly. If it's too difficult, dump it and move on to something else. And so, I mean, of course, like with any research or with any resource, the effectiveness of the technology is going to depend on the teacher's ability to implement it effectively. So it feels like there's a lot on your shoulders. But I mean, this is true with any resource. And with technology, there's a lot of support out there. So start small with, you know, kind of pick one technology. If you haven't already, my suggestion is Flipgrid. We'll talk a little bit about that later. It's easy, it'll have a big impact, and you could search YouTube for the tutorial. So, and my big tip for that is like 10 minutes or less. If you can't show me the basics of how to do an EdPuzzle or a Flipgrid or insert the name of the app here, if you can't show me that in 10 minutes or less, then like ain't nobody got time for that, especially no teacher. Oh, that's my Move It app telling me that I've been sitting for too long. So yeah, just really keep it simple and 10 minutes or less. And while you're on YouTube, maybe search for some inspiration from teachers. A little tech tip there. You know, filter for playlists. That's my one little tip for when you're searching YouTube. For videos that you either want to use as a teaching tool with your students, or if you're searching for videos as sort of inspiration for yourself or a tutorial. If you filter for a playlist, that means that somebody somewhere thought that video was important enough. It was important enough to add to a playlist. And so it's sort of almost like a mini peer review. And so that's one thing that I do. Okay, now we'll get into the more, if they're into some technologies that you can use for language production and reception. So speaking, writing, listening, and writing, and reading, sorry. I don't see any questions in the chat, so we'll just keep. Of course, computers and technology can be great for, you know, targeting these range of production skills. And also the research is showing that using technology for speaking tasks can really lead to improved fluency and confidence and willingness to communicate in face-to-face situations later. And so, leveraging that technology to then, turn that into a face-to-face, into a live interaction is really shown to be quite effective. So some things you can do for oral production for speaking with technology. One idea is to get students to make videos. So there's an example there. I won't play it for you here. I'll leave that on your own time. I want to point, so these are two students in French as a second language, grade 9. These are both students who are English language learners who had moved to Canada quite recently within this school year. And so this was their first year of French, and this was we did lip sync videos. And so that was they would find a French song. This one they did Zombie by Maître Gims, and they had to do a little music video where they lip sync the video. You could give questions to students and have them answer. I have a teacher that we work with that every week she posts like less than a minute long video, just a selfie with her phone of her asking her students 3 questions, and they have to post back a selfie of them answering those questions. And the idea is not that it's homework because like she has to have them do this outside of class time, but it's that they're physically speaking French like in a different place than the school. So you're literally taking that language production outside of the classroom and really making it like concrete and authentic for them. And super simple, doesn't take a lot of prep, and a really easy way to get some oral production out of students. And then you can go the whole like doing cooking videos, doing guided tours, and really like ask your students what videos are they watching on YouTube and have them make those, right? What kind of videos are they making in their first language? So like kids are making videos all the time. What are they doing in their first language? Have them do those. See, I really enjoy the comment there in the chat about the lip sync idea, because sometimes they get a lot of flack from other teachers who are like, but they're not even speaking French. How can that help them build language proficiency? Well, for one, so like they're hours and hours, like you give them 6 weeks to do this project and they're listening to the second language, super authentic input for hours on end, trying to learn these songs, right? Learning new vocabulary and phrases. I really found that it helped with the pronunciation, because with a lip sync, in order to do it without speaking, like you really have to exaggerate your lips. And when you're going from English, especially American English or North American English to learning French, they kind of speak with that hot potato in their mouth. And so they really need help like opening up the palate and pronouncing things. And so I really found that this helped. And then bringing in that cultural aspect, the students are collaborating together. We had students from different grades working together. It was amazing. And when I say intense engagement, like, when you give a project in a class and you have like 1 or 2 that you would want to keep forever as examples, when I did the lip syncs, there was like 1 or 2 that you wouldn't want to keep. They were all like keep forever examples. And so on this page here, actually that lip sync, this link is going to take you to, I made the project outline. It's in English, so you could translate that for your second language class. And then there's a bunch of student examples, and there's even a couple of me lip syncing rap. So, just to show you how fun it is. And so, yeah, it's a great, it's not easy to do at all. And overdub and EdPuzzle, a great idea. Listening in the chat here. And then the research is showing that when you get students to create something like a video or a podcast or a blog, that's really helping them gain this deeper understanding of the target cultures as well as their own culture. And when you're gaining that deeper understanding of the culture, you're gaining a deeper understanding of the language, right? And so you're really getting a lot of bang for your buck there. Some teachers that we work with find it really daunting to have students record and edit videos. So here are a few tips for you. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over them, except to say with recording, use what you have and use what the students have in their pockets. If they have a cell phone, you have them use that. If you have, a Chromebook in your classroom, use that. For editing, again, I put that on the students. What are you using? Do you use iMovie? WeVideo is really nice because there's some free versions and there's some Like you can choose if you want it simplified, kind of a medium editor, and then like a professional editor. YouTube, I'm not a huge fan of. Magisto isn't bad. YouTube Studio is getting better though, but ask the students, like will probably find one by themselves. They don't probably even need your help with the video editing. And then to share them, you could have students insert their videos into a Google Slides presentation. So of course you can have them add it to a YouTube playlist. You can now create collaborative playlists. So you share that link with your students. They can all upload their videos. I found with lip sync battles, there's like copyright issues. And so it was creating problems. And then there's the whole FOIP, like freedom of information and students posting in public. So that's why I go right to the Google Slides first. I like that because it sort of mimics a playlist, because you have one Google slide presentation for the whole class and the students enter a video on each slide. And you can have them write a little description as if like a YouTube description and their name in the little speaker notes. They have to do a title and everything. You can even go as far as having the students like watching the videos and commenting back and forth in the speaker notes. And so you can really get some more collaboration and interaction that way. Of course, Google Classroom or just uploading to a Google Drive folder as well is totally possible. And I just put together this little one pager if you're looking for, you know, some reminders on ideas of how to use student videos. So having a classroom. So we looked at speaking, now looking at writing. So with writing, the nature of writing has changed so much, right? When we're looking at collaborative writing platforms like Google Docs and blogs and all those kinds of things, social networking, writing isn't the same as it was 10 or even 5 years ago, right? 10 years ago, I would have said, you'll never have a kid write an essay on a phone. And like, who's to say that hunched over the computer is like more comfortable than like laid back in my recliner with my phone, especially now with speech to text and things like that. And so, you know, we really need to redefine what writing is in our minds, right? And when we're promoting collaboration and an authentic interaction in these tasks, and especially when we're bringing that into writing, because I think writing can be really unmotivating for students and difficult for students in a second language, even in their first language. My English language arts and literature teachers would argue. But like getting them to collaborate together and doing something authentic is really going to help them reduce that anxiety. It's going to, you know, help them learn more because they're not as stressed and they're working together and it's authentic. And by authentic, I mean, if you're teaching 13-year-olds, what do 13-year-olds do in their first language? We'll have them do that in the second language, right? So some examples of ways students could collaborate. One idea is to get them to do visual dictionaries in Google Slides. So, you know, at the beginning of the unit, I used to do like, we're learning about food now. And so I would do the, here's my slideshow with all the food images and the, you know, the vocabulary in French. And the kids would have like a handout with all the images and they would write down the vocabulary. Well, now I give them an empty slideshow and I make them figure it out, like go find animals, and they have to go find them. And like, they're not writing down 20 animals like they did when I gave them the slideshow, but you can bet your dollars to donuts that those kids are memorizing the 2 that they inserted. They know those 2 animals. And so you'll see, for example, from one of the slideshows, so these are actual slideshows from my students. When we were starting the unit of animals, or starting to talk about animals. And so they go in and each kid would pick an animal that they had to go find out what it was in French. And they would enter it here on this slide to kind of claim that animal. And then they have to enter a slide and enter in an image. And like, I never would have chosen this animal. Like I never would have chosen, they get really, you know, they get fun with it. And like, I wouldn't have chosen anteater. That wasn't on my list of animals, but this kid loves anteaters. And like, I can guarantee you that 6 years later, if I call this kid, he remembers what an anteater is in French, right? And one thing you don't see, because I just took it off for privacy, is I would have students put their name in the speaker notes so that I would kind of know that everybody had participated. And then if you are done 3, then you can go and decorate the title slide and stuff like that. My suggestion for if you're doing adjectives or adverbs is have them do like a 4-pick one word, because when you're thinking like salty or like delicious, like if you just show ice cream, like I might think that's delicious, but somebody might not. So this student, he translated, he wasn't supposed to, so coloré, colorful, right? Or if you're looking at appetizing, right? So you have more than one image, so it really like, you know, defines that word. And then the students can refer back to this. It's on Google Classroom. They can refer back to it all unit, right? Animate the titles. If you make them animated, then when you play the slideshow, like you would just see the image and you can, you know, play a fly swat or play, you know, teams that have to scream the word first or whatever else. It's just a lot of fun. Oh yeah, I love my GIFs. That's another, well, actually it's a tip later that we're going to talk about that. So it's good that you brought it up. Another, so this is actually an idea, a project that or a task that I stole from one of my Division 1, so really, really tiny elementary kids, like when they're 6 years old. And she would use technology with them in their English class. And so I stole this and I used it with my junior highs in French class. And so basically they collaborate online, either by Google Meet or by chatting, to brainstorm words related to a topic. And so I gave them like a web that they would collaborate on to, you know, brainstorm words and topics or words and phrases. And then in a Google slideshow, they had to do an acrostic poem. So there's a few examples there and things like that. And so just getting them to kind of, you know, come up with some of that vocabulary on their own, instead of me like, here's the slideshow and here's all the vocabulary you need to know. Jamboard is something that since the pandemic has become like a pretty awesome tool that I've been using a lot. Great again for brainstorming vocab and phrases when you're starting a unit with kids. It's great for giving them writing prompts or having class discussions and having them respond to them, either where each kid gets their own Jamboard, and so each slide is maybe something different that they're adding to, or collaborative. And so if you have a large group, got a few tips there. I would have multiple slides. And so if you've got, you know, maybe multiple questions, you put one question on each of the slides. And then you would have students like break them up. So you might have 4 students on one slide and 4 students on slide 2, et cetera, et cetera. And then they self-pace, so they, you know, go forward when they're finished. And then that means you don't have 30 kids on the same slide. That gets a little bit crazy. I always tell students not to repeat each other. So if you see that sticky note, then you can't say the same thing, but you can upvote it with a star. So if you see a sticky note that you were gonna, you know, offer the same thing or the same idea, then you put a star next to it. And so sometimes you'll see that there'll be, you know, like an idea and they'll have 10 stars next to it or whatever. And then I like to have them place the items together. And so this is great as well for co-creating criteria. So when you've got, you know, a project with students, if you really want to get them engaged with the assessment, create the criteria with the students about, you know, what that project should look like and what an excellent and a, you know, a limited and a satisfactory might look like. And so, you know, really get them engaged with that. The other idea is crowdsource your project ideas. So when we say get the students to do authentic things, ask them what they listen to, read to, talk about, or what they write. And have them, you know, give you examples of those, and then you kind of think about that and have them add. So the first slide is, for example, if you wanted to give one to each student, like a placemat, and they would, you know, kind of fill in all of their answers, and you could collect those. Or you could take the next slides and use them if you shared them with the whole class, and you could have students put a bunch of, like, students puts one sticky note of what they like to read, name something you read yesterday, no matter what it was, everything you wrote yesterday, what app has you writing, and just kind of crowdsource the ideas. What kinds of things do you like to listen to? What's your favorite kind of music? And get those ideas from the students, right? And then again, using the memes and stuff to just kind of get their attention, right? They'll read the question better when it's on a meme than if I just type it out. So looking at listening now. What's nice with technology is, like, now in my French class, especially when we're teaching second languages, like these languages and cultures are all over the world. And so we can really get a range of voices and a range of cultures for our students to listen to. And sometimes just the fact that it's a different voice saying the same thing that I would say, they listen a lot more, right? They can listen to it multiple times. On YouTube, they can slow it down, right? There's the images and the videos and things like that. And so it's all supporting that comprehension, and it's all really supporting the language learning. One way to use technology for language reception for listening skills is bringing YouTube and EdPuzzle together. So EdPuzzle is this really neat app and website where you can take a video from YouTube or Khan Academy or TED Talks, or even a video that you've, like a selfie video from your phone, one of your own, and you can turn it into an interactive quiz. So as the students are watching the video, it'll stop and give them a multiple choice or short answer question, or maybe a little note. And they can get immediate feedback. You can export that to Google Classroom. You can have it automatically marked, the whole shebang. It's pretty amazing. The first, and when we're talking about user-friendly, so the first EdPuzzle that I ever made was an 11-minute video on Remembrance Day in France. And it took me 14 minutes to make my first EdPuzzle. And so it's pretty amazing. It's like pretty like, oh, I want to add something, I'll press this button, and oh, there you go. And so that's kind of a cool thing. The kinds of videos, it doesn't always have to be those like language teacher videos, like the this is the video teaching kids how to use this grammar or vocab, or this is how we talk about this thing in the language. Think about really authentic things like cooking videos, music videos, or concerts. I like to have concerts in the background when students were working. It's a little less distracting than music videos. Movement breaks, like dancing, yoga. I've got a little playlist there for French if you're interested, or mini TFO. So for those French teachers, I've got a few little goodies on there for you. Film trailers are great. Interviews with celebrities are amazing. So like whenever I did a song lesson, we'd bring in an interview with a celebrity. There's some great ones out there. If you don't know Human the movie, preview each excerpt that you show, but there's some really great snippets of different languages and different cultures and things like that. Practical jokes, gaming walkthroughs, like that's what students are watching. So find a gaming walkthrough in Spanish or in Chinese or whichever language you're teaching, and show that to your students, right? The 360-degree videos are really cool. So that virtual reality now that you can get in YouTube, right? Unboxing and reviews. These are some of the most popular videos on YouTube. Is like a kid who buys a toy and he unboxes it, or a kid like with a phone or a technology thing, and they unbox it and they play with it, and that's it. And so these are the kinds of videos you can show your students, and also use for inspiration for the kind of videos that your students can make. If you haven't seen the joy of Google Translate songs yet, I highly recommend that you do that. So if you've ever had students just not understand that like Google Translate should be used in class, this is a great tool, because they take the lyrics from songs and they put it through multiple layers of Google Translate. Like they translate it to one language, then another, then another, then another, then back to English. And when it comes back, it's like all weird. And so, playing those every once in a while really, even though it's English, so it's not in the target language, it's that little judicious use of English that can make a big impact. And so I'm showing that when you've got 5 minutes at the end of class and the kids are really good, they think that they're scamming you because you're showing them an English video that's funny, when really you're teaching them something. I'm just trying to, this was, if you're looking for funny videos, this was just an example I put in there about a French cat. So, and then, yeah, technology for reading. I'm not going to go in super in depth into reading, except to say like Read and Write for Google is amazing. Their other languages are getting better and better. They're getting more and more accents and voices for the text to speech, and their speech to text is getting better and better at recognizing language learners. And so it's great for having students organize ideas, using the visual dictionaries, the glossaries, things like that. It's just amazing. So if you would like to take a few minutes to share here. I'm going to copy the link and put it into the chat. And I've got some from some previous sessions here as well from some teachers. So one idea, just one way for you to kind of try out Jamboard, but then also for you to share with your colleagues. If you want to share, and if you go up to the top and flip through the slides, so there's different slides. So the first one is, how do you use technology for writing in your classroom? And then how do you use it for oral skills, for speaking or oral interactions? How do you use it for building listening? How can you use technology to support reading? And so if you look on the side here, if you take this little sticky note thing, you can just add a little sticky note. So I like read and write for Google. Oops. And then you can save it. You can even change the color and everything. And it's just kind of neat. And then we close it off. And it's just a neat way of, if you haven't used Jamboard before, it's kind of a cool little tool for. So for writing, some people are using Google Slides for collaborative writing or using Padlet. Padlet is sort of like, if you can imagine like a big vision board online, and you can add text or links or videos and things like that. So you could give students like a topic and they can just kind of add stuff onto the vision board. It's pretty neat. Looking at here for oral skills, Flipgrid I'm seeing come up a lot. And so if we don't make it to that at the end of this session, then if you're looking for super simple to use and very impactful, I would highly suggest that you take a look at Flipgrid. It's a great way to kind of fake TikTok or Instagram, and like, students can respond with videos or images or text and trick them out with emojis and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. For listening, lots of songs with subtitles. Yes, lots of songs. EdPuzzle for practicing listening. It's a great tool for listening. Yeah. YouTube videos, more authentic music integrated into various tech-based activities. Easy Spanish on YouTube, slow it down, lots of topics. Yeah, and I believe there's Easy French as well. And so the other thing is on YouTube, what you can do is if you go down to the settings, you can change the speed. And I find 0.75 is pretty good for language learners, especially if you're doing like an interview with a person who speaks the language as a first language, and you've got kind of junior high students or whatever. 0.75 doesn't make it sound too weird, and it just slows it down enough that they can kind of catch a lot more of it. Bookmarking tweets to show the class. Yeah, great, because it's super authentic, right? It's creative quizzes, definitely. Okay, I'm just going to move on because we have a whole lot of time. And I did want to make sure that we talk a little bit about grammar and vocabulary, because using technology for grammar vocabulary can be really helpful, especially if you're encouraging collaboration in the learning of the grammar, and that the grammar is in context, right? So we're not learning grammar in isolation. It's about applying it and using it in real, authentic contexts. And then integrating that range of multimedia sources is also going to be really helpful when you're trying to get students to, to improve their grammar and vocabulary. So language learning apps is not the same as like learning to use the language, right? So how can we get students to do things that are communicative and authentic, like writing a text message, commenting on a social media post, creating an infographic, captioning a meme, a GIF, or an image? These are things that they do in their real life. And so how can we have them do that in the second language? And we can see here that the research is showing similar types of activities. So like flashcards, SMS, virtual environments, subtitling, those kind of little captioning ideas is going to be really helpful for students and can be really funny. So one, get your point across with humor. GIFs, memes are great for that. And so, yeah, this was actually a real GIF from my first day of class. We would go through the school rule, like through your class rules, and this was my don't use Google Translate one, right? Or give them a topic and have them create a slideshow of GIFs and memes. It's a great way to get them writing, super short. And so they don't see it as like a huge writing task, but you have to be really succinct in a meme, right? You only get so much space. Super authentic. And, you know, it's what people in their first language are doing. They're reading GIFs and stuff. So there's an example presentation here, and I'll share the link because you can, so if you go to the tiny URL in the bottom of the first slide there, you can get your own copy. I have this one in French as well because for our French teachers. And if you go up here to the arrow, you'll see that I've added in slides where the backgrounds are some of these kind of common memes, because I don't necessarily want my students going on to a meme generating website that has super offensive and like inappropriate memes, right? So I fake it in the slideshow and then they can just write on top, right? And so if you'd like to, I will put that as well here. There we go. And yeah, you can go ahead and use that slideshow. You can add one. We always get one on, you know, if you want to add one on Teacher PD, then go ahead. But yeah, memes are a great way to get students writing and reading and super fun for them. And then lastly, in the last 5 minutes here, I just wanted to show you a few tips for culture, a few new websites I've come across that you might find helpful. And again, this authenticity is really coming through in the research again, right? So things that are authentic, so those that are created for a mother tongue speaker audience and not altered for student use, are motivating for students, right? It's a rich source of linguistic and cultural content, and it's also going to lead to great language learning, right? So we talked a bit about some of the kinds of videos that you can use. But if you don't know what singers are popular in the language that you're teaching, like Google it. Like what songs or shows are popular in language or country or whatever, and you'll find some. Think outside the box, look at traffic cams. Drive and Listen is this really neat website where you can, so you've got like a driver, somebody's driver cam, and then the radio in the background. And so it's just taking a second here. Yes, you've got some like visual input, but then you've also got the audio as well, which I'm not going to play over top of the webinar recording, but you've got all different kinds of places. And so it's just sort of a neat, you know, you can have pictures or students point out the colors. What do they see? What do they hear? They can make up stories about the people in the cars. Like just take it as far as you can. But just the fact that it looks different and there's a different sound and stuff, you're going to get some deeper learning that way, right? The students feel like they're there, and it's really going to help to, you know, deepen that learning and just be more engaging. And then window swap is this where you can open a window. So people take like 10-minute videos of their window. And if you log in, you can actually save certain windows, which is pretty cool. But so this one is in Australia, but you can just like switch window and it goes somewhere else. It doesn't have to be in the country that you're of a language that you're speaking, right? It could just be a random place and we're talking in the second language about what we see or about what the people are doing, and things like that. So it's just kind of a different way to bring in some different cultural content. Right. And then finally, just some parting things about feedback and assessment and using technology is that we're always focusing on what students can do with the language, right? Because we want them to be able to use the language. We want them to be able to communicate, not just talk about the language or talk about conjugation, right? And so when we give students this regular feedback on their language, that is also going to help increase their motivation. And so computers and technology can really help with this regular feedback because it can automate the feedback. It can make it super efficient to assess things and give feedback. In Google Classroom, you can have comment banks now. With Moat Chrome extension, you can leave audio comments. So now not only are they getting feedback, but you could give that in the second language and they're getting some more authentic input. The whole idea of automated evaluation with Google Forms or with Socrative or Kahoot and some of these, you know, student response systems is going to be great for students and for teachers who are looking to save some time. And just keeping in mind that we're making sure that the assessment aligns with the task and with the learning outcomes, right? So again, this idea that like the technology being cool isn't enough. It has to lead to language learning, and that's what we're assessing. So here's a few student response systems. If you click on the YouTube link, I put together a playlist of tutorials for most of these that I could find. So just a few shout outs. If you don't have Wi-Fi at your school, so we have schools where some of them have like, the school is so full, we have portables. So it's like a mobile building that's added on like in the field next to the school. And so they, up until recently, didn't have Wi-Fi. So using EdPuzzle, Kahoot, and that wasn't super helpful. Students couldn't do it on their phones. And so Plickers is one where you print off these cards. And then the teacher would open the app in their phone and you scan, and the kids, like if they hold it, the card this way, it means A, if they turn it the other way, it means B, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can still do that, you know, kind of game playing, automatic feedback, but you don't need to have Wi-Fi. So it's great in remote areas, things like that. And again, another shout out for Flipgrid, because it's pretty cool for having students do videos on that. I talked about EdPuzzle and Padlet. Pear Deck is really neat, and if you use it, I highly suggest using the Google Slides add-on. So you can basically turn your Google Slides into more interactive slide decks. So for example, you could have, if this was a Pear Deck, I can add and ask you to move your cursor to which one of these student response systems is your favorite. And then I could see individually, or I could even display to the whole class, all of the cursors are on top of each other, and we could see where everyone kind of voted. We could have you draw answers, and as well as, you know, typical A, B, C, D, and that kind of thing. So they're kind of neat. But if you're looking to go down the rabbit hole of technologies, here's some that you may find interesting. And if you look in the speaker notes, I just kind of describe them all. And so, yeah, that's. So any questions now that we've finally made it to the end, sort of on time?
We don't have any questions, but it's been a fantastic webinar. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for explaining, you know, the rationale, the research behind everything that you've been saying. I think it's worked really, really nicely, the way in which you've, you know, created this framework with referencing research around how all 4 skills can be catered for on the use of technology. It's been really, really interesting. I'm sure people in the chat would like to say a big thank you to you for putting together this presentation. I love the use of animated GIFs as well. I'm a big fan of GIFs, and I love the way in which, you know, they really bring slides to life, and all the ways in which you shared all the different ideas around the use of technology. It's been a really interesting and fantastic webinar. So thank you so much, Stephanie.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. And I am going to do a little shout out for Slides Carnival, because they gave this, I got my slide decks from them. And so if you like the design of it, that's all Slides Carnival. They're beautiful and they're free. And yeah, don't hesitate to email me. If you'd like, follow our work, IISLE and EPSB, they're language teachers. And so we, you know, tweet out articles and stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you so much, Stephanie. It's been really, really interesting. Helen, a few final comments, perhaps.
There we are. Thank you so much for that. Well, I've just written there my summary of it, really. I mean, Joe and I have been very interested, haven't we, in tech for years and years, and we go back a long way. And I just think that presentation, I can really see why Joe was so keen to have you come along to speak to us, because it's just beautifully presented. You've got all those lovely categories, and you have, I mean, as we were talking about, that's
from the Lit Review. Those are the categories from the Lit Review. And so that's, I have to shout out to Dr. Mary Grantham O'Brien for making such an amazing resource. Yeah,
well, it's great, because it also, what it's doing is always forcing us to think about really why we're doing it. It isn't just because it's there, we're using it. You are thinking about how it links with the skills, and really thank you so much. And yeah, certainly I'm sure that people, Joe puts this on his YouTube, and lots of people will be watching it. And thank you, it's really generous to share the link to the presentation as well. So,
anytime. No problem at all. Because there's lots of links in there, and I know that there was a lot of technology and a lot of ideas. And so I just hope that this can kind of frame a little bit some of it, and then yeah, and then go back, take a look later when you're not so overwhelmed, because 2020 and 2021 have been difficult. And so yeah.
But you know, you've brought it together, because there are things which, to be honest, some of the things I thought, the lip syncing, I remember Stephen Fawkes did a session on that once, and I haven't used it. And at the time I thought, oh, that's a good idea. But almost for someone then to say it again, I think, yeah, because it's not easy. You're absolutely right. It takes time to do it.
And like, check out some of the videos. A lot of those students, like I said, in our French classes, I had kindergarten to university French in the same class, because we would have students who may move from Francophone countries and students who moved here not speaking any English or French. And so, you know, it's super engaging. It's fun. Everyone works at their level, and good times.
And we've got some comments there you can see in the chat as well.
Oh, thank you.
So,
for the benefit of the recording, should we read
workbook.
out some of the comments for the benefit of the recording? So Florence has said, thank you so much. I now have a much better and clearer way of presenting all these ideas to convince some colleagues. That's brilliant. Brilliant testimonial. Lovely.
And yeah, use the slideshow if you need to.
That's lovely.
great.
And then Ina has said, so many ideas to try out. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. That's exactly what we want, isn't it? That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, so shall I stop the recording now? And then
That's good.
and where my mouse is. I don't know where I've hidden the control.
I can do it. I can do it.